Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Pleased to be here with Raj Dadhia from the Dynamics AX R&D team. Thanks for being here, Raj.
Great to be here.
We're going to talk about this, an issue that is near and dear to my heart and really important for this release, and that's simplicity. But before we kind of dig into it, I think it'd be great for you to tell our viewers and folks tuning in a little bit about what you do on the team and your responsibilities in R&D and on the product for AX 2012.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Rajesh Dadhia. I've been on the AX team for about 4 years now, and primarily I own the foundation technologies in the server and tool space. So my team is responsible for building the server infrastructure, the services infrastructure, development tools, and install, deployment, monitoring sort of technologies, for the AX systems.
Excellent. So as we think about this very general term called simplicity, there's so many different ways to spin it based on who you are, based on how you use the system, based on what you use the system for. But everyone has the same end goal. We want to make an experience for everyone who touches the system to be consistent in terms of its simplicity. And that's really a hallmark of how software gets used, of how simple it is. It's certainly a hallmark for Microsoft software that it is simple to use. Sure. So how do you kind of think about simplicity? How do you guys pivot it? What are the audiences you kind of think about as you set out to make this to be a simple type of product?
Sure. So when we look at simplicity, there are personas that we look at that simplicity applies to, and then there are dimension of simplicity in terms of how do you measure sort of simplicity. What take for example, what does it take to install the software? So that particular action can be measured in terms of time, or it can be measured in the number of steps. Either way, the goal is to kind of sort of minimize both of those, as well as making the experience intuitive. The goal always is to see whether the user or at the other end can do the task without reading any manuals, for example,
Sure.
right?
Sure. So how did you approach it, for instance, from the developer standpoint, that one of the core audience of who's going to be using this on a daily basis?
Right, so that's a great question, and I think sort of to further what I was earlier mentioning, as we look at different personas and what we have done in AX 2012, you're absolutely right. There are different audiences. There is development audience, there are system administrators, and then there are end users. And we try to make the experiences that they are likely to have with AX 2009, AX 2012 very simple. So when it relates to, for example, the development audience, as you sort of look at the development community around AX 2012 or AX ecosystem, there are existing developers who are traditionally your X++ developers, or there could be new developers who are coming, let's say, from the .NET world. And in both of those cases, the goal has been to basically enrich their experiences, give them access to new technologies, be it cloud or services out there, and make it sort of model driven, where they are most likely configuring the system rather than programming every little detail or nuance of it. So from the installation perspective, I can give you a couple of examples where we have simplified the experience. The first example I'd like to give you is about install experience for developers. Developers typically like to install all the bits that come with the system so that they can make changes against it, code against it, and actually test their changes on the same machine that they're working on. And we have made basically the developer install a single-click install, where when you run setup, you can choose to say that I am a developer and I'd like to have a full install of the system. And from that point onwards, we ask you very minimal questions actually to get the system up and running within a matter of minutes to get you through the entire experience. And then the file copying or whatever can take at its own time, and developer is pretty much done.
Well, I think that's huge. Just to interrupt you for a second, because a lot of the perception of ERP, and especially when you have a very large implementation, is that it's just clumsy, bulky, takes forever to kind of do. And I know you guys in the team and the R&D team have spent a lot of time kind of saying, how can we compress that? How do we kind of give a better time to value and get the system up and running faster? So it's kind of small things that you mentioned are actually pretty big in terms of how a customer is going to use the product, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. And I must say, Guy, here that our customers are the ones who actually helped us improve the product here. through their experiences, through our partner channels experiences, we collected enormous amount of data where we actually did a benchmark study to figure out why are ERP systems perceived as bulky or hard to install. And we ran a 20-day project to interview different partners and in-house lab tests. And what we determined was there are essentially 3 or 4 things in the mix that can actually cause people to sort of perceive ERP installation in that manner. And we actually went ahead and attacked those specific problems. So for instance, the integrated prereq checker utility that comes with the AX 2012 setup, it does bulk of the heavy lifting for what the implementers were spending a lot of time on. So let's say if you have a complex ERP system where you're trying to leverage full power of the stack, take for example the reporting servers, the portal servers, your web services, and you have different mix of clients. In that situation, you want to get the system up and running fast. Obviously, that's everybody's goal, but it's a complex system that we're talking about. And what we end up doing is, based on a given machine characteristic, we can figure out what all prereqs that machine might be missing, and we give a very guided sort of experience to our system administrator to walk through that process very smoothly. And places where they need to install updates, we just guide them through either web links or cases where we can download the really cool software ourselves. So it pretty much sort of gets you to an appliance-like experience, if I may say so, with just few clicks essentially.
Right. So we're going to talk to one of your colleagues, Kevin, more on the client side and for end user around usability and simplicity, because that's obviously of importance to the people who are going onto the system every day. But one of the key audiences you talked about right at the beginning were the administrators. And so it's one thing to provide simplicity from a development environment and installation perspective, but then you have this group of people who are key to keeping the system up and running and making sure that the business processes are in place, that things are mapping the right way. And I know you guys have done a ton of work for the administrative audience, administrator audience as well. Maybe touch on that a little bit.
Absolutely. And again, that's a great question. As we look at the administrator persona, their world is sort of divided along one line. On one side, a lot of their work involves configuring the systems. Sometimes it's a one-time configuration, sometimes it's an ongoing configuration. An example of an ongoing configuration would be getting a new user onboarded into the system and giving that user appropriate access rights to the system, where they have access to information exactly what they need to do their job. And on the other side, you have administrators who are involved in the operational aspect of the management. And these are the folks who are involved in making sure the system is up 24/7. Any critical errors or needs that the system are responded within a reasonable amount of time. And we made a tremendous improvement on both sides of the fence essentially. So on one side, from the administrative administration aspect, we have added a new capability to manage security easily. So out of box, for example, AX 2012 system has these pre-configured sort of templates, if I may say so, which we call role templates. So the role-based security experience in AX 2012 facilitates you to kind of provision take the templates that are in the system that we ship out of box, customize them to your needs with minimal sort of configuration, and then provision system users directly into one of those roles, and off you go. Your users are sort of up and running within a matter of minutes to hours, depending upon the complexity of your customization.
So to wrap up then, I'm interested in the work that you've done, and you mentioned, and I think the viewers will be really pleased to know the work that you guys put into the process in terms of taking surveys and doing focus groups and doing a lot of this testing up front. But as all these features have come into the product, what's been the feedback of the customers and the partners that have been part of the TAP or the beta programs? What feedback have they given you on the changes that they've made, and how's that impacted how they use the system?
Right. Great question. I mean, we have, of all the examples I talked about, to begin with, we got great feedback from our customer and partner channel, just knowing that these are the investments we are making. As we went through the TAP program, at every stage, we had a chance to review our specifications with them, our design documentation with them, and get an ongoing feedback. On top of that, as we actually build these bits, at every single milestone, we had the opportunity to get feedback by having customers try those bits out and tell us, what is good or bad about that. So as actually we have sort of come to the end game, really it's the way, from my perspective, the way I look at it, it's the product, or it's the features or components of software that we built for AX 2012 together with some of our customers, who've been directly involved. And since they have been involved, I mean, their feedback has been addressed, and they are at a point where they feel that they can actually do a lot with it with very little sort of time investment in the product. So.
Absolutely, and the ones I've talked to are certainly reflect that sentiment. They appreciate the input that went into it and the fact that they had an input, and they're really pleased with how it came out. And I know I can speak for a lot of people when I say that we're really looking forward to the release of the product later on this year. So thanks a lot for your time, Raj, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me here.